Okay, yeah, thank you for joining again. Yeah, thank you all for joining us at today's partner seminar. It is my great pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest speaker, Joshua Crawford. Joshua has been really a valuable collaborator on our multiple projects relating to neurodiversity, and he has been generously sharing his wealth of knowledge and experiences, insights with us. So George has dedicated his life to learning how to learn. He spearheaded the design of and led multiple international learning and development departments in Fortune 200 companies, including GE Capital and Synchronony Financial. And he is also a keynote speaker and strategic partner with multiple universities on topics about the neurodiversity and inclusion. And Josh holds a master's degree in design management and has dyslexia, ADHD, dyscalculia, and anxiety. And today, Josh will be sharing his insight on neurodiversity and creating an inclusive culture. And we're very fortunate to have him to share his knowledge about this topic. So please join me in extending a warm welcome to Josh Crawford.
Thank you. And before we hand things over to Josh, I just have a few reminders for our participants here in our Zoom room. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining. My name is Max Malmud, and I am a member of the faculty or the staff here at the Center of Disability Studies that hosts these partner seminars. And just so everyone knows, we are recording this session so we can put it up on our CDS YouTube page later. And just a few reminders that if you could please turn your video off during the presentation, and we ask that you also please mute your microphone until we reach our 15-minute Q&A portion at the end of our session. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, you're welcome to put them in the chat, but just note that we will keep track of them to answer at the end of the chat rather throughout it. We have also enabled the captions feature, so you may see an alert noting that. And otherwise, we hope that this session sparks new and expanded collaborations and ideas between us and the others that we've been able to work with at CDS. And this time, I will turn it over to Josh to take over.
Thank you very much, Max, Jim. Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to join us in this session. Just want to kick it off by saying, sometimes when I'm reading or even speaking, I get my words mixed up, and it happens to all of us. But for about 20% of the population, we've been hiding. And I'm not going to get this right 100% of the time for 100% of you, because everyone experiences the world and neurodiversity differently. But I am going to share several key points and several of my personal stories. And I really want to help to peel back the curtain to diminish the elephant in the room when it comes to neurodiversity. And today, we are going to be talking about neurodiversity and creating inclusive in culture. But before I do that, just really big shout out and thank you to the Center on Neurodiversity and everybody at University of Hawaii for making this such a wonderful topic and welcome topic. And I think the more that we share about it, the better it gets. So hopefully you'll have some key takeaways today that will help you go out and explore this topic more and have a better understanding. So as we get started, I'd like to ask you to all think back to when you were 7 years old. What did you want to be when you grew up? Or what do you want to be when you grow up is a question that you often get, around that first or second grade when you're 7 years old. So you might think, oh, I wanted to be a scientist or a poet. Maybe it was an Olympic gold medalist or a president. Maybe a singer-songwriter or an actor, director, and producer. Maybe it was a creator, or maybe even an artist. Well, take a second and think what that was, and hold that in your mind for a minute. And then let me ask you, what type of future would you expect for a neurodivergent adult who still reads at a 5th grade level, flunked basic algebra in high school, can't sit still, appears to daydream, doesn't always listen perfectly, and sometimes interrupts? This person also had a D average GPA and honestly should have been expelled freshman year of high school. What type of future do you see for that person? Well, honestly, that person is me. And this is my wife and our child. Back when we both went to college in Hawaii. That's where we met. So I'm one of the lucky ones. As mentioned earlier in a very nice welcome introduction, I am a global leadership development learning leader. I've worked in multiple Fortune 200 companies. I have the good fortune of working with several universities. I get to do a lot of really cool things. But it wasn't always this way, and there were many struggles along the way that helped me get here. And we're all really smart in our own unique ways. And that's really what I want to focus on today, because it's a journey. So just like you can probably tell, this is an older picture. That's our oldest daughter I'm holding there. And this is our oldest daughter today, in the middle between my wife and I, surrounded by our other 2 children. So enough about me. So in school, we're taught pretty much one way, with little flexibility. And neurodivergent students often don't get the opportunity to let their strengths shine. They don't get to flourish on what comes naturally to them, because school is designed one typical way. Now, what if our work was the same way as school? So to give you an analogy, imagine that we all wake up tomorrow and we're all accountants. Now, there's nothing wrong with being an accountant. I love my accountant, but I couldn't be an accountant. But honestly, think of what your job is today, and if tomorrow your only choice was to be an accountant, how successful would you be? It's kind of what it's like to go to a school that's designed one way of thinking. Now, one thing I want to talk about that is another way of thinking and another way of learning is called universal design for learning. And here's a definition that actually was from the University of Hawaii's website. For me, this is too many words. So I like to break it down. And when I break it down, I like to look for key points and then kind of bucket it together. So the design of learning is all about flexibility, flexible goals, methods, materials, assessments. And then on the other part, it really focuses about the universal. So this is where you get the universal design for learning, which is, it's not a single solution. It's multiple approaches are acceptable. And we understand that there's diverse learners. Therefore, we need diverse learnings. And that way, everybody doesn't have to be an accountant. You can choose your own path. And learning how we learn has been around for thousands of years. But take my word for it. Take Confucius. It's a famous saying that says, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. Because too much of how we learn ties back to just reading in a textbook or listening to a lecture, where we really need to engage. There's another person named Edgar Dale that tried to expand on this, and these are rough estimates, right? So it's all rounded to the nice X tenths number. But it really says we need to engage. We need to tie learnings back to personal experience. We need to have more discussions, and we need to do teach backs with each other to really understand the material. And these are ways that we can help engage all learners, not just neurodivergent people, but this is really about inclusion for everyone. I always start off the learning sessions that I design and lead with ground rules. And it's not just sit up straight, pay attention, don't fidget. Those are not my ground rules whatsoever. Those are too just down and dirty. I like more like chocolate ice cream and sprinkles. So how I get people to engage, these are my basic and fundamental ground rules, not just in the classroom, but in life. So no judgment, very first and biggest ground rule, because judgment is the #1 killer of creativity and sharing ideas. Even if you're not the one speaking, but someone else places judgment on something that someone said, everybody else tends to be more quiet because they don't want to be judged themselves. Yes, and is the most collaborative tool that I've come across because it allows people to build on each other's ideas and not say, no, I don't think that will work, or, but you should try something else. And then starting with rough and ugly gives people permission, especially in the corporate world, that we don't always have to be so polished. Because you can take some squiggles on a page, and by having no judgment in yes and, you can build on those squiggles by adding an eye, a beak, a tail, and a couple of feet. And all of a sudden they turn into birds. They're not the prettiest birds, but it's a start. And it's okay to share that so that we can build on it. So one of the things that I ask you is to please use the chat. And I'd love it if we can capture, if I say something that resonates with you, put it in the chat. If you have an aha moment, put it in the chat. If you have questions, put it in the chat. And Max is going to monitor the chat for questions. And as he said, towards the end, we're going to save some time so that we can do the Q&A. But I'd really love to have your engagement in the chat as we go through this. So let's talk about what is neurodiversity, right? So I do a lot of work with the University of Connecticut. They have a Center for Neurodiversity and Employment. So one of the ways that we define it there is neurodiversity includes everyone because everyone is diverse and everyone is different. All of our brains are wired differently. But based on some of our wirings, we encounter barriers in school, in work, and life. And there's two main buckets that neurodiversity falls into. First one's neurotypical, which is about 80% of the population. Therefore, it's the status quo and who typically builds schools and policies and procedures and the status quo. The other 20% is neurodivergent. And our brains are wired differently. And that's why we have difficulties trying to fit in to a neurotypical world. Once again, back to the analogy, if you are all accountants tomorrow, it might not be that easy for everyone. But because we face challenges, we're often told that we're challenging or we're branded as challengers, when that's not what we're trying to do. So let's talk about a little bit about return on investment or return on inclusion. So the ROI, I like return on inclusion. That's a good one, especially when we're talking about neurodiversity and inclusion. So for society, once again, from borrowing from UConn, and this is staggering, right? So unemployment for neurodivergent adults runs at least as high as 30 to 40%. And this is 3 times higher than the rate for people with disabilities. And 8 times the rate for people without disability. And that's why it's so important that we talk about this, because there's so many strengths that neurodivergent people have that are underutilized. Let's talk about the ROI for corporations, because the World Economic Forum says that the top 10 job skills of 2025 are what fit in perfectly into neurodivergent people's wheelhouses. These are things that either come naturally or we've spent a lifetime developing in order to fit into a neurotypical world. And the World Economic Forum says up to 50% of all employees will need to be reskilled. And I like to contest that to say, if we tap into our neurodivergent workforce, then we don't have to reskill these people. And in fact, a lot of the neurodivergent people are going to come with extremely strong skills that match these up. How fantastic would it be to have people that are with analytical thinking and innovation, active learning, complex problem solving, critical thinking skills, creativity, leadership, social influence, all sorts of technology, resilience, and reasoning that are really rock stars at these skills. The problem is we typically have to suppress these skills because they come with questions. How are you so good at that? How does this come naturally to you? Where did you study this? And in order to not get those types of questions or have to self-identify, because neurodiversity usually comes with labels that don't feel that way. We don't want to be boxed in. Because those boxes can be heavy and they carry stigmas. And the stigmas come along with burdens, right? So some of the common labels of neurodiversity are the types that it could fall into: dyslexia, autism, ADHD, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, Tourette's, OCD. Like I mentioned, when you have one, they usually bring a friend to the party. So I have dyslexia, ADHD, dyscalculia, and high anxiety. So as we keep going, just keep this in mind that, I'm not going to talk about all the different types of neurodiversity here, but the big three that usually come up are dyslexia, ADHD, and autism. So we're going to touch on some of those. So Einstein put it brilliantly. Obviously, it's Einstein. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life thinking that it's stupid. No one wants to think that they're stupid. But there's a huge psychological impact that goes along with those stigmas. One of the things that we know, it's called masking. And if you look at the picture on the screen, you might notice something a little bit off about the tree. This is a perfect spot to use chat. Can anybody see what might stand out once you look at the picture of what's up against the tree? Yeah, a human figure. Thank you, Lisa. Yes, there's a lady with body paint on that is standing in a pose up against the tree, right? We have imposter syndrome. I'm sure she doesn't think she's a tree, but right now she's having to act like a tree, right? And there's a lot of costs that come with that. So both the emotional toll and the physical toll to mask and try to fit in to something that doesn't come naturally to you. So with people, it's the mental wellness, the self-doubt, the shame. And to businesses, this goes along with your employees, where it's loss in productivity, sick days, and even turnover. So we need to stop focusing on the challenges and start focusing on the strengths. And we do this by turning shame into grace, self-doubt into self-compassion, and anxiety into confidence. I'd love to share an example of what a challenge-based approach would look like. So this is a simulation of how dyslexia works. And dyslexia is not caused by vision, it's the wiring in the brain. And every person with dyslexia experiences a little bit differently. I ask you to really take a look at the screen and try to read this, because it's going to be mentally draining. Trying to read this while I'm talking at the same time is even more difficult, because now you have to block me out while you focus on this. So imagine every book and every email being this challenge. All right. I asked you to hold it in your head. What do you want to be when you grow up? What was your answer back when you were 7 years old? So for me, I wanted to be the next Jacques Cousteau. I wanted to swim with the dolphins and the whales, to the point where I went to college in Hawaii. I changed my major, but I still got to scuba dive and snorkel and everything else, which was fantastic. But what sticks with me the most is that was the first time that I was in second grade. The second time that I was in the second grade, I just didn't want to be called dumb. Because I got tested, I couldn't read or write. I was tested for learning disabilities, and the State Department of Education came to the school, called my parents into the school, and we were all in one room, and they were going over all kind of the scientific stuff. And then they pulled my parents into the adjacent room to answer some questions and go a little bit deeper. And I could hear them through the door, and I didn't understand a lot. But the one thing that I did hear clearly is when they summarized my results to my parents, and it's still my earliest, clearest memory as a child. They focused on the challenges. And they said, Josh might not graduate high school, and don't count on college. And then that was followed by my mom breaking down crying. And that plagued me. And it honestly branded and it diminished my hopes and dreams. The second time I had to go through second grade. You see, stories are incredibly powerful, and they're how we own our narrative, and it's our path to healing. So if you have a story, share it, because I'm not alone. There are thousands of people like me that have a similar story. And stories are one of the most powerful tools for inclusion as well. So to go a little bit deeper, so I was an innocent second grader who heard this statement. And in order to not be called dumb or think I was dumb, I had to mask it. And I did this by being a class clown. Now, the fact that I had glasses and braces didn't help very much. And you can only be a class clown for so long, and you get picked on. So then you become a practical joking punk. So I did that. I took on that persona, and I didn't really care. And, nice little ruffle on the shorts there as well. But to go a step deeper, yeah, I was too cool to care. This is my high school transcript. And yes, to prove it, this is mine. So if you look at the grades and the classes, you look at a GPA, my GPA in high school was a 1.9. And Mr. Holden was my science teacher. So right here, physical science, he was my favorite teacher because he was a practical joker himself. And a few days before April Fools came up, I said, hey, Mr. Holden, what's the best practical joke anybody's ever got you on April Fool's Day with? He's like, Crawford, come on. I've been here for 20 years. Every year people have tried and no one's ever been successful. And he kind of scoffs and turns and walks away. I'm like, oh yeah, challenge accepted. So on April Fool's Day, Mr. Holden goes out into the hall for a minute. I run up to his desk. I put a huge glob of super glue in his chair and sprint back to my chair. And the second my butt hits my chair, he walks in and all the students are like, did he see him? Did he get away with it? Mr. Holden came in, sat down on his seat, and where he remained, for about the next 5 minutes, and he had a habit of getting up and walking around about every 5 minutes. So he goes and he puts his hands on the table, leans forward to get up, realizes something's wrong. He kind of slowly rolls back down and just remains seated. He played it off beautifully. Lucky for him, it was the last class of the day. So we all went home, and then Mr. Holden figured out how to separate himself from his chair or maybe even his pants. I don't know. But the next day, at the end of the first period, all the students flooded into the hall, and it was a manhunt to find out who superglued Mr. Holden to his seat. And that happened for the rest of the day. Our last class of the day came around, everybody took their seat. I was pretty anxious, didn't know what to expect. And Mr. Holden walks in, smile on his face, and he's like, congratulations, you are the coolest group of freshmen that I've ever met. Because as you can see on the board behind me are all of your names and 150 points extra credit to whoever the first person in that turns in the culprit that super glued me to my seat yesterday. Everybody's quiet and everybody's looking around. And he said, now, you have all been extremely cool to protect this person, but are they cool enough to protect you? If they don't come forward in the next 3 seconds, everybody here has detention. I'm sorry, Mr. Holden. I did it. Mr. Holden looked me in the eyes. Crawford, hallway, nah. And in that quiet hallway, Mr. Holden gave me 2 options. Option number 1 is use my creativity skills and my leadership skills for good and promise him that I go to college. And at that point, I had given power to the voice of authority in the 2nd grade that said, forget about college. You're not good enough. Not going to happen. So I said, so what's option number 2? And again, he looked me dead in the eye and he said, Crawford, you took it too far. I'm going to expel your ass. It just got real. But before he gave me those 2 options, he gave me the best gift that anybody has ever given. He said, if this was simply first period and someone had turned me in, he would have expelled me. But as the day went on and no one turned me in, he started to wonder why. So he figured I must have some leadership skills if people are protecting me. And then that got him to thinking that I'm actually the first person to successfully pull off a practical joke on him in 20 years, and I'm only a freshman. So I have to have some creativity skills as well. And he told me, if you take your leadership skills and your creativity skills and you figure out how to put them to good use, you will find a way to go to college. And from that moment on, changed my life, changed my perspective. He reframed how I learned and focus on my strengths. So I started hanging out with kids that wanted to go to college, and we formed study groups. And in those study groups, they loved it because, as Confucius say, hear, see, do, they started to teach me and paraphrase and reframe the learning so that they learned it a lot deeper until it made sense to me. And my GPA went from a 1.9 to a 2.4. And then from a 2.4 to a 3.1. Now, don't pay attention to the D's in chemistry lab. That's a completely different story altogether. But he literally showed me a different world for the first time. And I was captains of my sports teams, and I was vice president of my class, and I was volunteer student of the year, and that's what got me accepted to college. And just to take it a level deeper, this is my senior high school yearbook, and this is the real Mr. Holden. And as you can see here in the crease, he even signed it super blue. Now, he was a visionary. And the world is slowly catching up. Because now dyslexic thinking is in the dictionary and it's a skill on LinkedIn. And not only was I able to get my undergrad, I have my master's too. And I tried to go back and get my MBA, but my brain doesn't work that way, so I couldn't pass the GMAT. And a friend of mine told me about design thinking. So I went to SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, and I had 0 design background. And I aced every single course because that was in my strengths and that was in my wheelhouse. And because I learned differently, I get to teach differently, just like you're seeing here. And now I get to run workshops and talk to you wonderful people. And this whole thing is about being God. Mr. Holden was a guide. There's so many opportunities. And it's not a coach, it's not a mentor, although it could be. You don't have to be a boss. My ask of all of you is to simply be a guide. Now, examples outside of Mr. Holden, and I'd love it if you can put this in chat, and I will not get you for spelling, but who are the guides in these pictures? Put it in the chat. Spelling doesn't Yeah. Rough and ugly is good. No judgment. Here's another one. Here's a couple more. Now, my favorite guide of all times isn't a movie character. And if anybody happens to know this person, please introduce me because it is on my bucket list. Yes, Neo. Neo's the star. Morpheus is also a god. Yoda is a god. Yeah. Mr. Miyagi. Yes, Rafiki. Awesome. Yeah. So what does it take to be a god? Not a lot. Not a lot. Just pick two of these things and you're off to a fantastic start. So identify people's strengths. Once again, focus on strengths. And no one has to disclose. Neurodivergent, neurotypical, doesn't matter. Just for anybody, that's the inclusiveness. But complement and reinforce people's strengths. Listen and really listen to understand. And help remove roadblocks. That's another one. Positive reinforcement. Show empathy, empower, inspire. Just start off doing these things and the ripple effect that it has is amazing. And we also need to shift our perspectives. So I'm going to put an image. Now I want everybody to get ready on chat because what I'm asking, once again, no judgment, no wrong answers. Whatever you put is fantastic. This is more about participation than perfection. Participation is our perfection, right? I'm going to put a picture up on the screen, and I want you to put in chat just your first gut reaction. Everybody get ready. Fire away. How does this picture make you feel? What's your first gut reaction when you see this picture? Tense, afraid, scared, squirrel. Yeah. Confusion, surprise. Yeah. Confused. Right. Fantastic. Thank you very much. You're awesome for participating in that. Yeah. Fight and escape. Yes. Thank you. What this is, or what it reflects, could be a challenge-based perspective. Because this is what it's like to only focus on challenges when you don't have the full picture. So what I want to do is I want to take a step back and get the full picture. A little different. And then I want to do is I want to shift the perspective. Because when we focus on the strengths and we have the full picture of the person, that ROI becomes massive. And this is the difference of focusing on the strengths versus challenges with the same picture. And we all do the best that we can until we know better. And then when you know better, do better. Not my words. Thank you, Maya Angelou. All right, let's talk about some people who are doing better. 40% of self-made millionaires have dyslexia. Here's some pictures of some people that you might recognize. And once again, if you have dyslexia, highly likely to have something else as well. Here's some other people you might recognize. Now, one of the things that you'll notice are there are a ton of actors here. And if you remember back to the lady that was against the tree and the masking, actors and masking are the same thing. You're having to take on a persona, or you're having to take on a character that isn't naturally you. And a lot of these people were able to take that survival skill and turn it into a profession. But it's not just Hollywood. The British Intelligence Agency, which is kind of the equivalent of the US CIA, actively seeks out and hires dyslexic people. Why? Because of those strengths that we saw from the World Economic Forum. Big picture thinking, pattern recognition, intuition, gifted analysts, brilliant at simplifying. And it's not just the government, it's also NASA. Any guesses on what percent of NASA employees have dyslexia? We don't have an exact number, but we know that it's above 50%. Why? All the same reasons. Now here's a fun part. Gotta get out my phone. Use the timer. So we're gonna do a little activity. Whether you are neurodivergent or not, we can all have different skills. Not all skills are the same for everybody. So I'm gonna peel back the curtain literally and figuratively. And we are gonna test our ability at pattern recognition. Because in front of you, you have the numbers 1 through 54. What I would like to ask you to do is in numerical order, starting with the number 1, go as high as you can, find as high as you can in 30 seconds. And you can't skip a number. So you gotta go number 1, and then number 2, and then 3 and 4 and 5. If you get stuck on 7 and you can't find number 8, 7's fantastic. But I'm gonna give you 30 seconds to see how far you can get in numerical order. Ready, set, go. Five more seconds. Stop. All right, put it in chat. How far did anybody get? If you got to 3, that's great. Once again, we're chasing progress, not perfection. 13, 19, can't find 7. Yeah, 7's tricky. 9, 11, 18. Awesome. That's fantastic. Now, in the spirit of being a guide, I'm going to add some guidelines to help you. And I'm going to ask you to do the same thing, and I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Look for the pattern. Start with number 1, then 2, then 3, and it will hopefully appear. You got 20 seconds. Ready, set, go. And stop. All right, now put it in chat. How many did you get? Hopefully people got further. You saw the pattern. 26, 27, 28, 32, 54. We got there. All right, 33, 27. That is awesome. Congratulations. Now, if you didn't see it, it goes box by box. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then back up to the top again. All right, so now that's a good warm up. Let's do it again. So I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. Same, go in numerical order. I'll even show you where the number 1 and number 2 are. Ready, set, go. See how far you can get. Look for the pattern. Ten more seconds. And stop. All right, put it in chat. How far did we get? This one might be a little bit trickier. 17, 12, 15, 23. That is fantastic. You guys are so good at this. All right. For those of you that might not have gotten it, here we go. 1, 2, box 3, box 4, and all the 5s and 10s are in the middle. We go back up the top, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, back up again. All right, now I think we're warmed up. I think you guys are going to crush this next one. Are we ready? All right, I'm going to put it on the screen. As soon as it hits the screen, I'm going to start the clock, and you got 30 seconds. Ready, set, go. 10 more seconds. And stop. All right, how far did we get? 29, 19, 27, 25. That's fantastic. 32, 24, 30. Love it. I want to apologize. I realized I caught myself. I said you guys. I'm trying not to say that. So everyone or people. So thank you. The pattern, if you got it, it's like a clock. Yes. Or a pizza pie. The other fun thing is it's a pattern within a pattern. Because if you notice that the type font is the same for each round. So that's your first 8, and then your 9s, your 10s, and the font keeps going around and changes around. A little bit of fun, right? So look at this. You've done pattern recognition now for 3 or 4 minutes. Imagine doing this your entire life in every situation, how good you are at pattern recognition. Sad thing is, a lot of us have to hide it. So that's why we're doing this. So hopefully we can create those inclusive environments we don't have to hide it. The other part is disclosure. No one should ever have to disclose unless they want to. Right? Not at all. Everyone needs to feel safe. It's extremely important. So at work, we have it where people can self-identify anonymously through our HR systems. And honestly, since we've had myself and other senior leaders sharing and showing that it is safe to share and building a community of people that have had shared experience, like mine in the 2nd grade and a Mr. Holden. The interesting thing is, everybody that I've talked to has a Mr. Holden in their lives, and it just takes one. It's always that one person. They can always go back to that one pivotal moment that we can identify that. So I want to end before we get into the QA and leave you with some takeaways. So 1 is be a guide. Focus on the strengths and empower people. 2 is disclosure. No one should ever have to disclose. Write down these 4 words in circle. How can I help? That's all you need to ask. 3, celebrate neurodiversity as part of your DEI networks or your employee resource groups. And neurodiversity doesn't discriminate. There's a ton of intersectionality that goes into neurodiversity as well. So it can really be intertwined into a lot of things. And then when we know better, do it, right? Thank you again, Mike. So you've got the trainings and workshops coming up at the International Pacific Rim at the end of this month. So hopefully everybody's aware and hopefully everybody's attending that. And then if you wanted, there's a free documentary on YouTube that is more of my story and 2 other people that have both dyslexia and ADHD. And then we all have a little combination of fun parts with that. So on that, I would love to pause here and open it up for Q&A.
Hi, this is Max, just chiming in. So if anybody has a question, again, just put it into the chat, or if you're comfortable enough, you're welcome to turn on your video or unmute, or use the hand raising function in Zoom to ask your questions.
While we're waiting for questions, if you want, I can share a little bit about university design learning. So intentionally, the ground rules. Yeah. And once we get questions, I will go for questions. But if you've got time, I want to utilize it. So set the stage, make sure everybody's comfortable learning with ground rules. These are fantastic. Please borrow them. More visuals, less words. Pictures worth 1,000 words, and everybody can interpret it themselves. Make it relatable. You know, my wife and I went to college in Hawaii, met in Hawaii, we lived there for a number of years. We had our first baby in Hawaii. I wish I was there right now. Super glue all your teachers. No, that's not the message here. The message is personalize and use stories, because we can all tie things back to stories, right? Have activities and engage people. Hopefully you liked the activity of the pattern recognition. Reinforce the learnings with quotes from people smarter than you. Have experience simulations so that people can see it. Thank you. I'm glad that you like the pattern recognition. And then what's next? So that there's always continuous learning. So hopefully you can all go to the pack room, or if you want, I'd love it if you check out the documentary. I tried writing a book, but I'm severely dyslexic. So I made a documentary instead. Any questions yet?
We did have one real quick, but I also want to mention that I'm putting in the chat a link to our feedback form. So if you could, or if you have anything that you want to provide feedback to us or Josh about in this presentation, we would really appreciate taking the time to fill that form out. So I'll post it a few times in the chat. But I did see one question. Let's see here, from an anonymous participant. Are we able to get access to the activity? We would like to use it for one of our trainings.
I don't have. It's a good question. Max, I'll see if I can send it to you. It's a PowerPoint, so I can flip it out of that. It is something that I've developed, so it's a bit of intellectual property. Let me get back to you on that.
Okay, no problem. And I know that question was from an anonymous participant. So if you want to direct message whoever this participant is, if you want to direct message me your email so I can make sure to get you that information possible, please let me know. And I saw somebody else also ask if there will be a copy of the recording. Yes, there will be this presentation uploaded to our CDS YouTube page once we review the captioning. So that should be up on our YouTube page, and there'll be an announcement on our CDS website once that is released. As we trickle down.
I do see one that came in. So neurodiversity seems to be relatively new. I'm curious if you have any suggestions on how to support students with resources to learn about neurodiversity for their own sense of self. So honestly, the documentary, I made it where there's 3 of us that are all neurodivergent, all from different backgrounds. And we talk about our experiences in school and from school and beyond into college career. And everybody that I've shared that with that is neurodivergent can find something in there that they relate with. And that's a start, right? So they just need to say, ooh, I relate to that, but that makes sense to me. And then you can say, oh, how? Tell me how. And just getting them starting to talk about it is a huge way to open up that door and have them help see other things. Also, at the end of the documentary, it lists a bunch of resources. So I think there's IDA, the International Dyslexia Association. There's University of Connecticut Center for Neurodiversity. So there's a list of resources in that as well. But honestly, just have them start talking about it. And that also lets them know that they're not alone, because there is a lot of feeling of aloneness because it is hidden. People hide it. Let's see. I think that. Okay. Yeah, I think that helped answer the question. If it didn't, please repost. Sorry, Max, were there any others you saw?
I'm not sure if maybe you answered this one. Somebody asked, what are some good resources to engage with universal design for learning?
That's a good one. I don't know. If you find out, let me know. So I just did a Google search, and I know about. So you can also call it design thinking. I believe you corrected, Holly. Please jump in and correct me or anybody else. Universal design learning is a fairly newer term or newer concept, and a lot of what touches on that is also in the design thinking. So it might actually be easier to Google design thinking and design thinking principles, and then tie those back to learning. And that combination hopefully would get your answer. or at least a good start. All right, great, thank you. I see people popping in, UDL guidelines. Paula, when did you find out that you were masking? How did you feel? This is how slow I read. You had the choice not to continue doing it. All right, so I knew I was masking. So in the second grade, the second time I repeated the second grade, all the students were like, why did you repeat? What's wrong with you? And I would try to say, well, I have this thing called dyslexia, this something. They're like, oh, you have cooties. Stay away from Josh. He has cooties. I'm like, okay, great. There go all my friends, because all my friends moved on to third grade. So I immediately started masking. And I told people, nope, I outgrew that. Nope, I outgrew that. Nope, it was just a one-year thing. So I had to lie and do that. And then how I just read slow here, when I had to read out loud, I would start laughing or try to make it like I had a joke in my head to cover up why I'm reading slow or why I'm messing up words. But that only lasts for so long, and then you become a punk to try and cover it up other ways. I did not share publicly until 2019. And that was because I finally felt safe at work, because I helped lead one of our ERGs, which is called Enabled Plus. And one of our senior leaders that I reported to shared about a personal story about a family member of his. And I figured if he could share, then it was safe for me to share. And I started to do it on little increments. And I had the support where now I've done it in front of 17,000 people. Great question. Thank you. Any other questions?
Just in case other people ask questions, I want to let everybody know that I'm going to halt the recording as of now, but please, if you still have questions, feel free to put them there.